Hi everybody, this is Warren Herman. In the teachings of Kempo Karate, there is this understanding that when one begins the path of the martial arts, one starts out with this idea of being fast and strong, kind of like a tiger. But when one transcends through dedicated practice those superficial motivations for being in the martial arts, one becomes more like the dragon, and one becomes able to develop one's character and becomes much more spiritual in one's approach. In the same way, a person who seeks the married life may begin with being infatuated or really interested in a certain person to marry, but as time goes by, this becomes much more subtle. It becomes about commitment, dedication, service to each other, just like the transition from the tiger to the dragon. Now, it is also to be said when somebody chooses the path of a religious vocation, becoming entering the religious life, or even choosing a priestly vocation, that vocation towards celibacy sometimes begins, I would say, not like a tiger, but like a turtle. It begins in the way of defending against things, having a shield to protect us, having a self-image of being special, having a protection against disappointments, rejections, and the complexities of relationships. That's part of the equation. And maybe it's a response to seeing relationships that have been less than satisfying in our lives, whether our own or those of other people. And so there is this element of the turtle when we begin this kind of more withdrawn path of celibacy, whether in the religious life or the priesthood. And as time goes by, though, just like the tiger must transition to the dragon, we could say that the turtle must transition to the phoenix, which is another traditional creature in Eastern imagery. And the phoenix is different, obviously, than the Western phoenix in our mythology, but there is this sense of this bird, this kind of powerful creature that is much more subtle. And that's really important because the thing is, if there is this way in which we begin our married life as the tiger, we may begin our religious life like the turtle. It's this thing where we start out immature, whether it's immature by being too worldly or immature by being too otherworldly. And then there must become this integration at these higher levels as the dragon, as the phoenix. And so that is really a deeply important thing to remember. It's to remember the understanding of these paths. And on the path of, eventually on the path of being on the religious path of the celibate path, one will eventually feel the pain of repressed longing. That is the transition between, we could say, the turtle and the phoenix, so to speak. It's kind of like, or if we wanted a more natural metaphor, you could say there is the egg. It's like the egg is nice and smooth when I'm becoming a monk, I'm doing this and that, and then there is this deep sense of pain. I wish I was in a relationship. The pain. That's normal, and we have to care for it. And caring for it is the way that we transition to true health, and that is the nature of the path. And so the thing is that by caring for it, we achieve the kind of intimacy that makes it healthy. And so it's the fuel for caring for that part of ourselves. It develops the interior intimacy that makes the vocation healthy. And this happens, so for example, it's like the little, when that longing comes up, it's like the chick breaks out of the egg and it's all sloppy and messy. And we need the warmth of awareness, and that's our own self-awareness, the warmth of the light, the warmth, and also the mother hen, which is like the care of Jesus and Mary for ourselves, and that helps us to grow and helps us to achieve that interior intimacy that enables there to be health inside of us. So it really is that egg phase of avoidance and freedom from things. The messy little chick, which is discovering that longing and processing that pain with our own self-awareness and God's love for us. and then that leads us to transition into being a healthy little chick running along, and then when we grow up and we become healthy. That's another way of looking at this, And so this also becomes something we see in the married life, because, in the married life, what we will see if we take the path of relationship, it's like that egg is kind of like everything's perfect. It's like, oh, there's the wedding, it's all wonderful, it's all squeaky clean and happily ever after. But then the thing is, then the mess comes out, and then we see that the unsatisfying emptiness of relationships. Whereas we mentioned in the previous pathway, it's seeing that kind of repressed longing and processing that is the pathway to growth. In the married state, it is the unsatisfied, it is the dissatisfaction, and having to care for that dissatisfaction with our partner and with family life. That is the way in which we care for that messiness. So that's when the little chick, it's all happily ever after. The chick breaks out. It's like, oh, this is actually dissatisfying. This doesn't meet all my needs. I need God. And then we again have to bring in the warmth of our own awareness and the mother hen of God and the Virgin Mary, to care for us. And so it's definitely that shift there. And in a way, we also could say that the person who chooses celibacy ends up having to face the pain of processing the beginnings of longing more so. And the married person must deal with the pain of longing that is met but yet is still dissatisfying. And so that is something that is really important to realize. And the real importance to understanding these models of growth is because it normalizes the journeys. If we don't have a normalized understanding of these things, if we don't understand that, yes, if we choose the celibate path, we will have to deal with, that repressed longing or the beginnings of longing, and if we choose the married path, that we will have dissatisfaction, and we'll have this dissatisfaction with things, and the married person they kind of end part of longing, kind of like, oh, it really didn't get me what I wanted anyway. If we don't understand that that's what's going on, then we might misinterpret what's going on in various ways in our journey. We might, in a sense, demonize when we see what's wrong. We say, oh, I was only covering over my longings with religious vocation. Oh, I really want that. Or we could say, oh, I really just was only worldly and terrible in pursuing this marriage. Marriage is worthless and doesn't get you anything. So there's this thing where we can demonize both of those polarities. We can kind of do that. And we may have, it may be shocking, and it's very normal. So because it's almost like we go through three phases. Just like we talked about that chick, we kind of have that same phases just even with our relationship to vocation. We see oh, it's so important. Oh, it's so great. If I were married, then I'd be somebody, I'd be loved, and I'd be fulfilled, and it'd be beautiful. Or if I was a monk, I'd be so cool, and I would be so at peace and everything like that. It's idolized at the beginning. And then there's this thing of oh, actually being a monk is really hard, and I'm lonely, and it's I have to sleep on the floor, and it's it's all these things are not so great, and I am, that's not so good. Then it's okay, the children are screaming, my spouse is snoring. I mean, there's all these different dissatisfying aspects of this. So it's then we say, oh, then we kind of demonize it, this is the worst thing ever. This is a stupid thing. Or even if it's not that we're in the vocation, we also realize, oh, I'm covering stuff over with being a monk. Oh, I'm just trying to have a relationship, so I'm somebody. We can then demonize those things because we see this flaw. But instead of realizing that that's part of normal human development, that we will have mixed motives, and that whatever path we choose will will draw the poison out of us so that it can be processed. When we don't understand that, then we kind of can overreact on the path, because when we get these insights, then we might overreact. We might say, oh, I see it now. I'm going to change this thing. So we really want to have this understanding, so we don't throw out the baby with the bathwater on our vocational journeys as we kind of uncover our mixed motives. And so this enables us to kind of have a healthy perspective and not throw the baby out with the bathwater. So I think that's very important. And ultimately, this shows us that whatever path somebody chooses, there only can be this fulfillment if we choose to bond, this interior bonding between ourself and ourself, and by extension, using our adult self to bring through this love of God to our woundedness. And this is the only way that we can really make that transition. And this kind of lays it out, because we have that journey in the married state from the tiger to the dragon, in the religious state from the turtle to the phoenix. And we have to understand that the transition between those is, on one hand, processing the way in which marriage, the way in which relationships is not fully satisfying in the married state, kind of after they've been satisfied, and then in the religious state, dealing with those beginnings of longing and realizing that we repressed some longing and kind of had some avoidance there, and working through those longings. But it's always this caring for ourselves that makes this transition into a functional intimacy, and makes them into a path of growth, so that we aren't just defending against things one way or another, so that we become integrated in our lives. So hopefully this is helpful in understanding these paths, and that it will be a benefit to you in having a balanced approach to religious vocation or the married life.